so pretty, Ped.
Hi guys, my name's Pedro. Welcome to London. We're in the Alilon Academy, and we've got my best friend going to do some hair cutting for you. This is Johnny.
Hello everybody. How you guys doing? Hopefully you can hear me okay. If not, I'll try and project my voice even more for you. First things first, I'm so excited to be here, and I'm excited to be hopefully sharing some stuff with you. I've got Randy behind the camera looking very pretty. Yeah. And we're going to be doing something which hopefully will make you think of hair a little bit differently. One of the things that we get asked a lot in the academy is, it's great being able to do a haircut in 4 hours and to make it precise, but how can I do that in the salon? I'm going to show you different ways, different tricks of using precision cutting, but in a timely manner. So I'm going to try and cut this haircut from start to finish dry. There's a reason why I'm cutting it dry. I've got a beautiful model. You can't really see her face right now, but this is KK. KK, do you want to say hello?
Hello, where's the camera?
She's there. I've got Kiki under this hair. She's got beautiful hair to cut. It is quite aggressive in texture and quite coarse due to different types of processing services that she's had in the past. So I've decided to get it all dry, I haven't ironed it, and there's a reason why I haven't ironed it. Usually when you cut ironed hair, the ends of the hair tend to be quite pointy. So I've tried to avoid ironing it. I'm going to be working with different types of layering. And I'm using the shortest point in the middle, starting with a triangular cutting line.
James Mould says hi.
Is James there?
Yeah.
James, what's happening? James is actually getting on a plane now to go and do some education somewhere.
All right.
James, have a safe flight if you're going to...
Jay just joined Mayo.
Yeah?
Boys are in town.
The boys are back in town. Hey, boys. Okay, so I'm going to be using... Let me tell you about my first zone. So my first zone basically was a section from the crown to the top of the ear. And this is going to be zone 1, okay? I've worked from the crown to the top of the ear, and then from the crown to the centre nape, okay? And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working a pivoting sectioning pattern like this. And I'm going to be working on the base with a round cutting line. So in effect, my vertical shape will be round, and my horizontal shape will also be round. My vertical shape will be round due to the fact that I'm elevating the hair and using a round cutting line. So those are the two key factors that I'm using. In this scenario, I'm working on the base. Now this is an interesting point to mention as well. When we tend to teach round shapes, we tend to talk about the fact that there is no other direction, the fact that basically you're working on the base. The argument is, or if you're ever asked the question, when you're working on the base, is there other direction? Your answer should be a question. I'll give you an example. If we're talking about the movement of the guide, then the answer is yes, there's over direction. But if we're talking about the hair that's being introduced to the guide, then there's no over direction. So if anyone ever asks you if there's over direction or round shape, your response needs to be something like, it depends, are we talking about the cutting line and the hair that we're introducing, or are we talking about the movement of the guide? Because that differentiates the difference between the two. So I'm going to be talking a lot today about the Alilon philosophy, our language that we're trying to share with the world, our passion for what it is we do. And tonight's quite special for me because if you look around the room, or if Randy does a little 360, you'll see we've got a room full of people. And these guys some of them are our team, and some of them are from Taiwan. And we've been having a very, very busy week this week. We've been doing a primary shapes course with the guys. Feel free to ask me any questions you want, guys, and I will do my best to answer them as best. But this past 2 weeks has been a bit bonkers for us because me and Pedro and Madeline, we were in Italy 4 days ago doing a hair on stage with Davines. Davines is the product company that we tend to associate ourselves with. We've got a very, very amazing relationship with them, quite a personal relationship with them. They're a very, very unique company. So Hair on Stage is an event that they do around the world, and it's regularly done with audiences of up to 200-300 people. So we were very lucky to be invited there, and we did a hair on stage in Italy, in Bologna. And then we've come back to these fantastic people and done a 4 days primary shapes course.
Oh, you know what? They're staring at their phone because they're watching the live stream.
They're bored.
They're not texting each other.
Before I carry on, I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing now. I've taken a zone now, a second zone, which will basically be in front of the ear. So I've gone from the crown on the right-hand side. I've gone from this area here through to the recession area. So this will be zone 2. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work with vertical sections, and I'm going to pull everything to section 1, which means that my horizontal shape will become triangular due to my other direction, and my vertical shape will be triangular as well due to the angle of my cutting line. A little trick for you. This is really good to help you control and manage your over direction. If section 1 obviously will be this section here, and ideally what you want to try to do is pull the hair to the same point. So I'm going to elevate the hair, and I'm going to cut a triangular cutting line. Okay, now look at my feet, look where they are. Can you see them on this line here? Now I need to come back to this same point to control my other direction. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pivot from this leg. So I'm going to pivot, take my section, and then basically pivot back to the same point. So you can use areas of the room to manage your over direction. So in this particular zone, so zone 2, my number system will be basically 1, which is my initial guide, 2 will come to 1, 3 will come to 1, 4 will come to 1, and so forth. Again, using the pivoting motion with my feet, that way I always come to the same point, exactly the same point.
So Johnny, we've got a question from Paula.
Okay, hey Paula.
She's asking...
Where's Paula from?
I'm not too sure.
Paula, where are you from?
Paula's asking, do you prefer cutting hair dry, and why?
It's a very good question. Thank you for your question, Paula. So, cutting hair dry and cutting hair wet has its pros and cons. The reality is this. How we tend to teach hair cutting is we tend to teach people to cut the basic shape, the basic mechanics in on wet hair. And the reason for that is because it helps people work very cleanly and very methodically, and they can groom hair very, very easily. Ideally, you want to put the basic shape in wet and then work on refining and personalizing once the hair is dry. Now, the pros to cutting hair wet is that obviously you can work very, very clean, and you can really see your zones and your sections very easily because you can see the scalp very clean. That being said, the negative to working hair wet is that the hair is a lot more elasticated. So when you're working on wet hair, you can, if you're not consistent with your tension, you can lose the definition of your cutting line. I'll give you an example. One of the things that people struggle with a lot is working, for example, let's just say we did a graduated haircut. Often people cut a graduated haircut, and then when they go to cross-check it, they've got these kind of finger marks that do this. When they try and analyze why that's happening, they're so busy focused on the cutting line and the angles of the cutting line that they're not thinking about things like the skin. See, when you're working in certain areas, like around the hairline, the skin in this area is so much more flexible. Yeah? So what happens is, in this area here, it's not necessarily about using lots of tension or a little bit of tension. It's about being consistent with the tension that you're using. Let me just move on to this side so I can carry on with this haircut, and I'll carry on answering your question, Paula.
Just to add on to Paula's when you get there, John, Tiger Lily is asking about
What cool name?
different textures as well. Could you do this with curly hair?
Okay, very good question. Okay, so to add to that point, cutting hair dry, Paula, the benefit of cutting hair dry is you're working with one consistent texture. The hair has obviously been smoothed out. It's a lot easier to actually be consistent in your tension. The negative is the hair is more slippery. So unless you've got fat fingers like mine, it's easy to lose the tension in your cutting line. Is it sustainable to cut hair dry on curly? Of course you can. You can do anything. There's no such thing as right or wrong. It's more to do with the reasons why you're doing it. So if you think about, Randy, if you come on this side, I think it'll be easier for me to demo to you. I'm going to be working my third zone, which is this zone here. And I'm going to be working again with vertical sections, but this time instead of pivoting, I'm actually going to be working on the base. And my sectioning pattern will be completely vertical. So the negative to working curly hair dry is that you are working very, very visual. So technically, it's not the best for trying to cut a really mechanical, sculpted shape. I would tend to work on dry curly hair more visually, and the danger of doing that is the haircuts don't last as well because there's a lot less of a mechanical shape. The Alilon hair philosophy is quite a simple one. It's basically our job is to try and help people understand when, why, and how. The Alilon way. So if you can understand when to do something or when not to do it, or if you're going to do it, well, why should you do it that way, why should you not do it that way? And then once you've decided the when and the why, you know, the how should you and how should you not? And once you kind of understand this decision process, what you will find is that you'll be in much more control. And let's be honest, every single hairdresser, including myself, all we try and aim for is to be in control of our craft and try and be good at what we do. You know, we're all trying together to elevate the perception of our industry. And
A question from James.
which James? James
Marsters.
Okay, hi James, how you doing?
He's asking what comb you were using.
Oh, good question, good question. So I'm using, it's a Buey comb, but I'm using a wide tooth comb, not a tight comb. Bear with me, let me show you this. So they're two of the same brand, but one's slightly tighter and one's slightly looser. The reason why I'm using this comb, which is a great question because we were asking the guys before, the reason why I'm using a wide tooth comb is the wide tooth comb basically will avoid me using too much tension, which stops the hair from becoming static because the hair's dry. And when you're using a lot of tension and you're causing a lot of friction with a tight comb, the hair tends to become quite electric and it tends to become very static on you. So I'm trying to avoid that, hence why I'm working with the widening of the comb. Usually, if I was working on wet hair, I wouldn't use the wide tooth comb, I'd use a much tighter comb.
A lot of people are commenting about the colour as well.
Cool.
I know you're not going to tell them the formula, but who looks after the...
We just got invited to Federico.
Yeah.
By Adam.
Oh, bless them. Can I just say, on a serious note, it's very humbling being part of this process. When I was 16, I never thought I'd be doing something like this. So thank you for asking me questions, and I'll do my best to answer them as best I can, I promise. So thank you. The colour of my comb, that was the question.
No,
the colour of the hair, not the colour of the comb, okay? Because the colour of the comb's red. Okay, so I'm actually not a colourist, even though I have a ridiculous amount of respect for colourists because they make me look good. Especially, like, I'm very, very fortunate to be surrounded by an amazing team here at Enna, kind of headed by Madeline, who's, in my opinion, one of the best colourists on the planet. So I can't tell you the formula, unfortunately, but the colour was done by Evie, and I'll be honest with you, Evie did amazing because she never had a lot of time, bless her. She tried to, this was all a bit of a last-minute thing, and she tried to squeeze us in between doing clients, so she did an amazing job for me, trying to get a bit more of a consistency with the colour. It was quite patchy prior to us starting, so I think she's done a great job, and I love the kind of ashy feeling of the shape.
Okay, so one of the guys is just asking, for the ones who've just tuned in, can you give us an update on what you're doing, cut-wise?
Of course.
Yeah?
Of course, of course. So, go back to mechanics. So what I've done, I've started by separating the hair into 3 different zones. Initially, my first zone was from the crown to the nape, slightly off-centre. I worked from this point to this area here. I worked with, on the base, so I worked with a number system of 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6. And I worked with a round cutting line, so my vertical shape was round, and my horizontal shape was also round. When I got to this point, I then took a section from the top of the head to the recession area. Now, this is a really relative question, actually, in regards to where you're taking the zones. A lot of people put this connection in, but don't necessarily think about why. Why here, and why not a centimetre lower or a centimetre higher? Well, what you can see, whenever you tend to think about the roundness of the head, okay? if we look at it from a front profile, anything that sits just past the bend of the head will tend to fall down this way. Anything that's past the head will tend to rock forward because of the positioning on the head. So whenever you're taking a zone through the top, my advice is use the corner of the recession as your key to come down. And what you'll find is you'll get a nice, first of all, you'll get much more of an even amount of hair sitting in this zone here, but also the hair will tend to sit flatter a lot easier for you. So with this zone, which was zone 2, what we did is we worked with a number system of everything back to section number 1. Section number 1 was on top of the ear, here, just behind the ear, and it was a triangular cutting line. Let me quickly show you. And everything came back to that first section. Pulled it up, triangular cutting line, and everything came back to that first section. Then I've come through this side, taken a section that went across to behind the ear. This is my third zone, and I've worked again on the base. So technically, my back horizontal shape is round, but my vertical shape, if I show you this way, let me spin the chair around this way. So I'll play to Randy. Was triangular. Good. I hope that's answered your question, guys. So now I'm going to move on to my 4th zone. My 4th zone is basically going to be, again, from the corner of there to the recession, but this time I'm going to slightly curve it. Now the reason I'm going to curve it is because in that way my layering will be able to wrap around the head much nicer. So I'm going to curve my zone. Okay. Do that again.
Getting a hello from Romania.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Hi guys.
Got about 333 people in the room right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so...
So guys, Johnny, you've spoken about the Allelon hair philosophy. What about the company philosophy?
It's a very, very good point. Thank you, Petra. So, for those of you who have never really been part of our journey yet, I'd love to share with you who we are, what we do. Allelon, for us, and this is really important to people to understand, Allelon is not me and Pedro. It never has been. Allelon is about a group of people who think a certain way. It's a philosophy, it's a way of thinking, it's about a culture, it's about trying to really master what we do and not just talk about being good at what we do, but really try and be the best at what we do. Because a lot of people talk about, how good they want to be or how great they are, and it's like, just love hair, just do hair, and don't worry about the rest, just be good at what you do. So one of the things that I love about our company is that the people that are in our kind of world love hair. And our main philosophy, if you think about the Allelon brand, if you don't know what Allelon means, well, let me start from the beginning. Before I talk about our brands, let me just tell you what I'm going to do with zone 4, which is this zone here. I'm going to take pivoting sections, so my sections are going to pivot like this, okay? I'm going to work on the base with a really, really sharp concave cutting line, okay? Quite a strong, steep angle. Okay, so myself and Pedro, we're very lucky. We own 2 companies. One of them is Enna Salon. Enna Salon is a consumer brand, and it's based in London, Holborn, next to Covent Garden. And basically, we're lucky enough to find a beautiful building in the heart of central London. It's 5 floors, where we basically do consumer-driven hair. We also have, like I said before, an amazing relationship with Davines UK, and we're actually the flagship salon for Davines UK. They have their head office in our building. Myself and Pedro, we're Greek Cypriot, and Enna is modern Greek for the word one. Now when we say one, we don't mean we are number one. That's not what we mean. What we mean is there's one voice. So if I'm speaking, it's like Ped speaking. If Ped's speaking, it's like Woody speaking. If Woody's speaking, it's like Serena speaking. And the idea is that we all have one dream, one goal, one vision, one purpose when it comes to Enna, and that's to try and produce beautiful hair and share what we love with everybody who's not a hairdresser, and show people, the consumers, that actually what we do is a craft. It's not just a job. It's something we love doing. Whereas Alilon is a different animal. Alilon is an industry-driven brand, so it's for the hairdressers, it's for you guys. So if you see some of our collections are quite graphic, quite bold, and think of it more as Alilon is our way of expressing ourselves as craftsmen rather than consumer-driven business people. So Alilon is ancient Greek for the words one to another, the principles of sharing. So the idea is you have to have Alilon before you go into Enna. So you have to have education before you deal with the consumer. So those are how the two brands work. They're very different brands. Enna is a lot more about sustainability, which is why we have such a strong bond with Davines and the way they work. So the brand itself, I mean, if you go onto the www.ennasalon.com, you'll see photos of the salon, and basically you'll be able to see our home. And whereas if you go on Alilon Education or on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook pages or whatever, you'll see a bit more of an expressive type of brand. I don't really want to be talking about our brand and who we are and that kind of stuff too much, because I'd rather talk about hair with you guys, because that's what we're all passionate about.
Would you like to know where everyone's from, John?
I'd love to, man.
So we've got Julia from Texas, we've got Breezy from New York, we've got Victoria from Finland, we've got Maria from Boston, we've got Eva from Estonia, we've got Brenda from Arkansas, we've got Afram from the Netherlands, we've got Dana from Florida, we've got Philip from New Zealand, we've got, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Dinesh from Croatia, we've got Aura from Vancouver, we've got Christina from California, we've got Gear from Belgium. It's an international event, Johnny.
But you know, the irony of that conversation is that that's not us. That's you guys. That's Hairbrained, and that's Randy sitting here very humbly, and he's a very, very humble man. And we've met a few times, me, Randy, and Gerard. And one of the things that I've realised about the guys is that they're very humble about what they're doing, but what they are doing is connecting people. And the fact that I'm able to share what I'm doing with you now is one, it's very humbling for me, but it's also because of your dream, not my dream, it's because of your dream and what you're doing. So, well, in my opinion, Hairbrained is something that's absolutely unique. I love the principles of it. I love the idea of a community that has the same passion. And thank you for doing it, Randy, because what you guys are doing is special.
Nothing without you.
Right, so I've cut that fourth zone, okay? And you can see what I'm doing is I'm getting a very, very soft, loose finish to my shape. And now it brings me to my final zone, which is through the top here. So in effect, I've got a large rectangle running through the top. So I'm going to break that into two halves. So I'm going to have, in theory, a triangle here and another triangle here, okay? So I'm going to break this in half. And a good thing to do, just to isolate the zone, is to section it away really neatly, just so I don't disturb that while I'm cutting this top zone, okay? One of the things that I would like to share with you all, unless you've got any questions you want me to answer, one of the things that I would love to share with you guys is the purpose of what we're doing as a brand, and Alilon, what we're trying to do for the hairdressers.
There was somebody that's first week in their career asking for the best advice you have for them.
Perfect, okay.
Do you remember the name?
There it is. It's Gray Gilgo.
Okay. My first piece of advice is very simple. Just don't be scared to lock yourself away and practice, 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 practice. Because no matter what anybody tells you, I could sit here and try and share with you everything I love about what we do, but in the end, unless you physically practice, 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 it's just me talking. So,
me and Johnny used to practice on each other in his mum's hallway.
when we had hair, back in the days, it doesn't quite work the same way anymore. I'm going to come onto this zone here, okay? I'm going to comb the hair up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work quite a strong angle, and I'm going to work shorter internally to longer externally.
you tell the guys about when we first met, John?
Really? Okay. So, me and Pedro, we met when we were 16. Well, I was about, yeah, but we were both 16. And let me just, before I talk about that, my sectioning pattern, guys, just to make you aware of it, my sectioning pattern is going to pivot like this, across the top of the head, okay? And I'm going to work on the base, so it's going to be round this way, but triangular this way. So triangular, working from shorter internally to longer externally. And that will give me some extra length on top. When I first met Pedro, he was very, very quiet and never really spoke. And I was very young and a bit naive, and I mistook that for arrogance. So I thought he was very arrogant because he wouldn't speak to me. So because of that...
And wait, Johnny was the complete opposite. When Johnny walked into a room at 16, everyone knew he was there.
Yeah, but I was insecure. So I was insecure, so I used to make a lot of noise. Still insecure, but in a different way now. So we never really liked each other at first, and then, which was telling the truth. And then I gave Pedro some advice on a female matter, and
My wife's watching, be careful.
after that we just became best friends, and it's been an interesting journey.
Remember sitting in a restaurant when we were 16?
McDonald's, to be precise.
Yeah,
It's a
I wasn't
restaurant.
going to advertise it. And we said one day we'll have our own salon and our own education company.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
We had another question here. What are your major inspirations from Daniel?
Hey Daniel, how you doing, man? Good question. And to be honest, this is a question that I get asked a lot, like for magazines and things like that. Basically, I don't know if you're familiar with any of our collections, but our collections are always about people. And I'll explain to you why. When people say to me, what inspires you? Or when I hear people talking about the fact that, I don't know, this architectural building really inspires me, or this glass, or this vase, or this bottle really inspires me. Yes, of course you can get inspiration from anything. You can get inspiration from a building, or you can get inspiration from a bottle or a vase, but really, the inspiration isn't the end product. It's not the building or the vase. It's the person's brain who designed it. It's the person who thought, actually, this should be the shape of this building, and this is the material we should use, and this is why we should use this material. And if you can actually get into the brain of the creator of whatever it is that you're talking about, that's where the true inspiration is. So people tend to inspire me. And if you look at any of our collections, so we've got the main collection, which is based on the work of a photographer, an amazing photographer called Tim Flack. Then you've got one of our latest ones, Okafor collection, which is based on the work of a guy called Kelvin Okafor, who, in my opinion, takes precision, takes discipline to a completely different level. So there's Kelvin Okafor. Guys, please, if you do get some chance, just Google some of these names, because these guys are incredible. There's Kelvin Okafor, there is Tim Flack, there is Emily Tang, who is again another artist, and she was part of the collection, the Reverie collection. There's Angelo Bangalos, who's part of the Aces collection, who I had dinner with last night, who for me is one of the most amazing people in the world. There's Yvonne, who's part of the charity, who created a charity called Vital, which basically tries to help underprivileged children in India, and that collection is called Balance. Then we've got the Child's Play collection, which is personally one of my favourite ones, which is my children were the big inspiration for that one. Again, people are what inspire me. People like you, people like these guys, my team, they inspire me, they keep me going. The days when I don't want to do anything. Okay, that brings me on to my final zone, which is this zone here, which again you can see is like another triangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through this way by taking a section from the top to the front hairline. I'm going to cut a round cutting line, and I'm going to put everything to section 1. So my number system will be 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 6 to 1. Then I'm going to work on a fringe area, or for those of you in the States, a bang, I think you guys call it. A bang. Right, so section that hair away. And again, the key is to work really cleanly as you can. Even though you're working on dry hair, there's no reason why you should be messy. And For me personally, there's nothing more frustrating than watching someone who doesn't work with discipline, because we have a responsibility to inspire people who aren't hairdressers to understand how amazing what you guys do every day is. And I've been very lucky on my journey so far to work with a lot of people, and I love watching people work disciplined and clean. It really inspires me. Okay. So comb it up. I'm going to ignore all the other lengths, and I'm going to cut a round layer. Comb it once, cut it once, move on. If you have to cut the same piece of hair twice, technically it means you cut it wrong the first time. So really try and think about your tension, think about how precise you're working, think about the grooming from the root. One of the things that, if I could give you some advice on working rounder shapes, actually yeah, this would be good for you guys. Let's just say for talk's sake, I'm starting in the back and I want to create a round horizontal shape. One of the things that can help you is if you centralize your chair, and if you imagine there's a clock on the floor, okay? And I'm standing at 6 o'clock and Randy's at 12 o'clock, you're at 12 o'clock right now, okay? Think about it like this. Every section that comes out from the head, it has to hit a different half pass. So this section here is going to come out at 6 o'clock. The next section is going to come out at 5:30. The following section is going to come out at 5. And if you imagine numbers on the floor like that, you'll be able to really manage, because your fingers will aim for those numbers, and you'll be able to visualize a round shape. Another thing you should think about when we talk about cutting by numbers is symmetry. One of the biggest things that hairdressers find challenging is getting symmetry within a shape. So for me, it's quite simple. Think about it like this. If you take 12 sections to get from the center back to the temple on this side, then you should technically take 12 sections on that side. So when I cut hair, I tend to count a lot. I tend to be really mindful of how many sections I've done. So I know, so far, I've cut 2 sections through here. Yeah? So understanding your number system will help you understand and control your over direction. If you want symmetry, everything you do must be symmetrical, including the number of sections you take. If you take less sections on one side and more on the other side, the tendency is that you're going to have a lot less control over your over direction on the side with wider sections.
Ben's just joined.
Hi Ben. Which Ben?
San Diego, James and Ben,
Ben, what's happening?
the duo. And Camilla has also got a question. So, you know that first section you took in that zone?
Yep.
You didn't have a guide, did you?
No. So what I'm working with now is I'm basically working on the principle that KK needs to have her hair to a certain length because of the fact that she dances. So it needs to be long enough for her to be able to put into a ponytail or slick back or wrap it up and get it out of the way. So what I've been doing is I've been working with lengths that basically technically have no connection, but visually will connect. So now we're talking about this connection and how this connection works. So there's 2 types of disconnection. There's visible and invisible disconnection. Visible disconnection is when it's very obvious the difference in length. So realistically, what makes a haircut visibly disconnected and invisibly disconnected is the choice of length. And choice of length is everything. Let me quickly show you something. Come with me. Let me show you this. This is something that I like to share with people. So let's just imagine. Let's imagine this is a root, okay? And this is a piece of hair. And I love to show this to people because it really gets people to understand choice of length. Choice of length is everything when it comes to cutting hair. It's just everything. It's the difference between a haircut working by itself or a haircut having to be manipulated into shape. So let's imagine this is a piece of hair, this is a root, okay? And the face is here staring at you now. If you cut the length at this point here, what will happen is the hair will sit flat. If you cut it here, the end of the hair will flick away. So in order for you to get it to go under, you'd need to manipulate the hair into shape. If you cut it here, the hair will wrap into the face. So think of it as in, flat, out, 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 in, and here has no bend at all. So what will happen is it will hug your head. So a really good tip would be, when you're pulling the hair out, when you're taking a section, you're trying to understand choice of length. pull the hair out and then just release the pressure, look at the bend, and then understand what choice of length you want, because trust me guys, choice of length is everything. It's like the key to a haircut working or not. Let's go back to our haircut.
Okay, there's a lot of people asking about the colour formula. Just to let them all know, what we'll do is we'll get it from Evie, and we'll make sure on the final image that we'll post the exact colour formula for everyone, okay?
So I'm going to use some oil from Davines. Oil from Davines. This is an amazing oil actually. It's very, very good for stopping the hair from becoming static. And it doesn't overweigh the hair, which I love. And I use it on everybody, to be fair. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and I'm going to gently iron the hair through slightly, but I'm only going to focus on the ends, and then I'm going to cut the fringe area, because I haven't cut the fringe area yet. See, Kiki's so pretty, she makes my life, Keke's so pretty, she makes my life very easy. Okay, so I'm going to iron the hair through slightly. I'm going to give you some tips on ironing that hopefully will help you. Okay. Good. Thank you, Pet. Okay.
How much time in the salon do you take for haircuts?
So,
That's
good
from
question.
Daniel.
Hey Daniel.
Quintero.
So, as a company, we give all of our team an hour. Usually what tends to happen is we work with a formula of, say, 5-10 minutes for a consultation, 5 minutes for the shampoo. We tend to put the basic shapes in very, very quickly, and then spend a lot of time refining. Realistically, when you're cutting hair, when you're thinking about cutting hair in a certain way, your blow dry should take you 10, maybe 15 minutes max. If your blow dry takes longer than 15 minutes, then technically, in my opinion, which is my humble opinion, I don't want to offend anybody, it's probably the wrong length or shape for that particular texture, because the customer in the end will never be able to achieve that at home. So realistically, a haircut, the idea is to cut it so that way that the customer or the consumer just has beautiful hair all the time, and it's very easy to manage. So realistically, to answer your question, it's an hour we give ourselves, but we only tend to spend 10 minutes of that, maybe 15 minutes maximum blow drying, and then we spend the majority of the time personalising the haircut once it's dry.
Can you walk us through your training program? I mean,
Yeah,
just to inspire, for nothing else, I think. So
these are folders. These are some of the assistance folders. So we have an amazing staff training team. Kate Hussey and Madeline Murphy. Madeline's responsible for colour and Kate for cutting, and really strict philosophy on being able to document everything that you do. All right. So the guys, they would have to take photos of their model. They would have to do a hair analysis, and they would also have to write a progression sheet afterwards to describe the things that they've learned. And then one of the things that are really important, obviously it comes from Alalon, but it's obviously we put it into the ENA system as well for our training programs, is to be able to draw your work. Yeah, so we have a strong philosophy. You have to be able to do it physically, then you have to be able to talk it, and then you have to be able to draw it. And if you can do all three of them things, you really know what you're doing. So these are the folders, and you can see how much work goes into. That would be the colour aspect, and these are just examples of the guys cutting hair, and really just documenting all of their work. And it's something that each at the end of their apprenticeship, they've really got something that they can take away with them. Would you like to add anything, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, what's nice about it is watching their faces when they're doing their tests, and we're reflecting on their journey so far, and we look at the files, and you can see that obviously their first head sheet, their first progression sheet, their first photograph of that that line they did, for example, and then 6 months later what they're producing.
do you remember what it was like when you couldn't hold the scissors and the comb in the same hand, and you were like, where do I put my comb?
Still can't. I just got lucky tonight. We're very, very lucky. I mean, Kate and Madeline, like Ped said, they're doing an incredible job with our staff training system. And they really try and, some of the assistants are here, and you can talk to them now. But let me show you something which is quite interesting. You guys better get this right, by the way. One of the things we haven't spoken about is the Alalon language. And let me explain to you why it's come about, why the language has evolved. When I was training, I worked in an amazing company, and I worked with some really incredible hairdressers. But I was the kind of kid who used to go, you know, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you holding at that angle? What's the difference in that and that? And one of the things that used to really frustrate me when I was training was that, and you probably feel exactly the same, let me give you an example. So why are you doing that? Or why does that happen? It just does. Or with experience you'll understand. Or watch me and I'll show you. And what I found was, for me, it was just too vague. I just didn't understand. Or, for example, I'd ask Peter a question, and then I'd ask Tommy a question, and then I'd ask Stephen the same question. And each one of them, even though they worked for the same company, they worked in the same salon, they'd given me a completely different answer. So little Johnny was always confused. And that, for me, was a big, big thing that we had to solve as a product, as an education company. So what we've done is we've designed this language, the Alilon language of hair. And the idea behind the language is that once you've learnt it, I mean, originally we designed it, if I'm honest, for salon owners to try and help them standardise their brand. So that way, the next generation of hairdressers that are coming through, when you ask them a question, they're able to answer it in the same way. So the way we train our staff, no matter who you ask who works for us, no matter who you ask the question, they should all answer the question in exactly the same way. So we could do a little experiment now. I know the guys have definitely been studying, otherwise Kate would be quite emotional about it. Let's do a little experiment. Okay, so...
Ask Alex to leave the room.
Yeah. Ken, leave the room.
Ken, leave the room.
Okay. So if we for example ask I don't know, let's ask Serena, okay? We'll ask her 3 questions, okay? And then we'll ask Kane the same questions, and in theory, make sure Kane's not just outside the top heads. And in theory, or not in theory, they should all answer it, not just roundabout, but word for word the same, and that's the key.
Tell her to come close.
Huh?
Tell her to come close.
Okay.
So you don't have to
Serena,
yell.
come here.
This is not rehearsed, by the way. So.
Okay, so
Come closer.
my question to you is, what is a line?
A line is where the hair is cut with no elevation.
Okay. And what is graduation?
Graduation is a build-up of weight
Give me a bit more.
where the external shape is shorter than the internal shape.
Okay. And Alex, come here. Okay. What is elevation?
Elevation is the extent of which the hair is lifted away from natural form.
Okay. Right. Let's get Kane back in. So the idea is that no matter who you ask in the company, no matter who the next generation asks, they'll answer it in the same way.
Come and stand here. Right.
Okay, so Kane,
Yeah.
the questions that I asked, let me just remember what questions I asked. What is a line?
A line is when all the hair is cut at the same point with no elevation.
Good. And what is graduation? How would you describe graduation?
Graduation is a build-up of weight when the external length is shorter than internal length, and a line is a form of graduation.
Good. Okay. And what was the last question I asked?
What is elevation?
What is elevation?
Elevation is the extent to which the hair is lifted away from its natural form.
Good. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well done, guys. So the idea.
He doesn't get a round of applause. And you know what? A notification, I have to go on record, just popped up saying this is our most liked video so far.
Oh wow!
Can you imagine?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That's really sweet, guys. So that's actually
I
quite
think
sweet.
that's my wife pressing the like.
And my kids. Daddy, daddy. So the idea is for the guys who own salons out there, our syllabus, one thing you have to know about Alilon is that you're not allowed to jump courses. You can't just start with a creative course. Everyone wants to do the collection course and the creative course, but you can't. The journey of Alilon, the syllabus, which Ped's going to show you in a minute, is a complete journey, the same way we train our staff. It's exactly the same. So Ped, if you show them the journey, that's the journey. It starts with the primary shapes. Now the primary shapes is probably our hardest course and is our most valuable course. And you cannot do Alilon education unless you do that course first. So the primary shapes course basically is a 4-day course, and it's what these guys here are doing from Taiwan at the moment. And basically it involves a lecture, tests, studying, and you can't move on unless you pass your test at the end of the course. And the idea is that you don't just come, pay your money, and then just go and get a little certificate. And that's not what Alilon education is. And if that's the kind of education that you want, then we're not the company for you. Our goal is to be part of your journey and be with you. So if you ever have a question or you ever feeling lost, you can always just ask us. I'm just like you, so if you just write me on Facebook, ask me a question, I'll do my best to answer it, no problem. So primary shapes are the first course that we do. Before I carry on talking about the journey, I'm going to go through my whole haircut now and use a pointing technique. If I talk to you about pointing and how it works, one of the major things that I find very frustrating is when I see people doing this, especially like on stage. It really drives me mad when they pick up the hair like that and then they just start just boshing into the hair like that. And there's hair flying everywhere, and it all looks very dramatic, but there's no actual system to your pointing. So my advice would be this: pointing is a form of layering because it reduces weight. So when you're pointing a shape, try and think of it, or try and be a bit more systematic. So for example, when you're working from here to here, rather than just banging into it, try and really keep your hand sturdy and just open and close your scissors and move them side to side like this, from one side to the other. And what you should do is don't go back through, because the hair that you've cut is still there, so visually it might look dense still, but it's not. It's because the hair you've cut is still there. So rather than doing this, which a lot of people do, the problem with this is that you don't stop at the same point every time. Whereas if you work mechanically across, you tend to have an even removal of weight. Release the hair, look at how it sits, and if you're happy with the way it's sitting, then move on. If not, pick it up and go again, okay? Now all I want is for it to feel quite soft around her lips. I don't want to take the length shorter in the front because she needs it to be able to tie it up. So I tilt the head forward slightly, and I pick up every section. Let me just groom the hair properly.
Do you need somebody to hold for you?
No, I'll be all right. If you're working cleanly and disciplined, you shouldn't necessarily need clips. I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't used clips for a while now. And the idea is that you're working very mechanically, and you're working without the need of
Can you tell the guys about some of the classes that we do in America and around the world?
yeah.
And there's a few guys asking if we do any classes outside of New York.
Okay, so basically, if I go back to the journey, we've been very lucky, really lucky if I'm honest. We travel around the world every week. We were in Italy last week. We're here this week teaching these guys. I fly to Poland tomorrow with Kate. Then I go to Canada, Toronto. Then we go to Chicago. Then I go to Dallas. Ped goes to, where are you going?
Lithuania and Chile.
Lithuania and Chile. So we've got quite a lot of things that we're going on. Basically, you have to do a primary shapes course first. That's where you learn the language of hair, the language that Alilon uses. For example, if I say to you, your vertical shape is round and your horizontal shape is triangular, and elevation is the main contributor in controlling the distribution of length and weight in your vertical round shape, what angle would your section be when you're cutting that haircut? This language that I'm using is the Alilon language, so the answer obviously is horizontal sections, because that way your elevation is controlling your vertical round shape. But the whole principle behind the primary shapes course is to teach you the language. Once you know the language, then me and you, we can have an amazing dialogue about shape and about geometry and about form. So if you want a primary shapes course, if you want to join a journey with Alilon, then all you have to do is email info@alaloneducation, and we will guide you. Depending on what country you're in, we will either get our local teams to arrange for you to join our classes. We also do some classes here in the UK. A lot of the stuff we do is externally. For the salon owners out there, we also do a lot of, and this is something I'm really passionate about, which is in-house training for you, your teams, your educators. We look at your education systems, and we try to give you guys some systems like ours to help standardize your brands. And we spend a lot of time, for example, going into salons and looking and meeting the team and giving the salon owner advice and trying to be with them on their journey. A lot of the time, the goal is to get them inspired enough to understand the language and really share the language with their team. Because by having a communal language, everybody, to a certain degree, has an element of standardization to it. And basically, it helps you standardize your brand. So if you're interested in us coming to you, all you have to do is email info@alaloneducation, and we will do our best to make sure that we're there for you. And we'll come over there and share what we do and what we love.
I think we were really fortunate because we came from an education background, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that we could implement in our business quite easily, the education side. But for a lot of other salon owners, you know, they didn't have that luxury of being educators previously. So to employ someone, to help mentor someone, you know, to be able to do that for them is what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we own a salon, so we know the trials and tribulations of that. You know, 1 minute you're dealing with a broken toilet, the next minute you're dealing with a member of staff who maybe has had a loss in the family, the next minute you're dealing with a bank manager who's, you know, who wants to increase your, you know, your loan or whatever. There's always something. And one of the things that we tend to really pride ourselves on is our relationships with people. And if we can give you advice, if we can help you on your journey, if we can look at your business model, we can look at, you know, anything that, if we can take pressure off you as a salon owner, then we will.
Well, Daniel Quinterio is
Hey, Daniel.
asking, when is your book out?
Don't know if he's taking a mickey out of me or not. Daniel, you're teasing me.
No.
When you say book, do you mean like education manuals?
I think that's what he's talking about.
Okay. At the moment, we haven't produced any external documentation. We've got a lot of PowerPoints, a lot of lectures, a lot of things that we base all of our language on and all of our courses on. You know, if I go back to the journey, you start off with primary shapes, which is the fundamental language, and then from primary shapes it goes primary mechanics, which basically is the same as primary shapes, but without the theory, because you should already know the theory, you should have already passed the tests. So then what you should be doing is just practicing the actual basic mechanics of cutting hair, the principles of clean technique. And then it goes into primary disconnection. So what is disconnection? How does it work? Why this shape? Why that shape? How does it function? Why should I put it in this zone and not this zone? Then it goes to advanced disconnection, which is about multiple zones, how to combine the shapes, how to work with various lengths and combining them. So again, it becomes invisible or visible. And then it goes on to the collection courses and also the barbering courses, which are a bit more bespoke, barbering courses. Do you see what I just did? Let me show you something. This is really important, actually. Randy, do me a favour. You stay there. I'll move around. I'll move around this way. Let me come around this way.
I'll get you. Just pick it up. I know what you're saying.
So basically, I'm trying to show you the zoning, how clean the shape needs to be. When you lift the hair up, you should be able to lift the hair up and the zone should drop away. Yeah? Because of the mechanics that you've put in the shape. So if that doesn't happen, then what you have to understand is that your basic mechanics have been a bit messy.
So what would you say this haircut kind of fitted into the journey? Which course would it be?
Very good question. This for me would be the advanced course, so advanced disconnection, because it has multiple zones, it has multiple lengths, and the shape basically works in unison together. Again, Another good thing to do is count. So every time you do it, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So if you do that on every single section, 15 pointings, then you know you're going to get an even amount of weight that's been distributed and out of the hair.
So another notification popped up in the middle of your last. This is the most commented on video that we've ever done.
You guys are, honestly, thank you. I genuinely
When you're
appreciate
in the
it.
salon, would you count out loud in front of your customers?
No, but I do count in my head. I'll go 1, 2, 3. I do count in my head, and I do that a lot. I believe that you can't preach something and not do it yourself. So I can't sit there in a class and go, count every section, make sure you're working systematically and blah, 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 if I'm not doing it, because at the end of the day, you know, it's not do as I say, it's hopefully do as I do, because hopefully I'll show you something that will help you.
So just summarise to the guys, you know, how many zones are there in this haircut?
Okay, so
And what techniques are inside it?
okay, so within this particular haircut, there is multiple zones. Okay, if we start from the beginning, we've got 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got a total of 6 zones, and each one has a variation of round cutting lines, triangular cutting lines, and it's really important that in the end it works as one. It looks like one beautiful haircut, but it's a really fun way of playing with long hair, because often with long hair people get bored and they always tend to start the haircut from the same place and do the same thing over and over again, because they know it works, they know it kind of works within their time frame, which is for me a massive problem, because in the end, after doing it as long as I have, you end up getting frustrated and bored, and that's something that I never, ever, ever, ever want to be when it comes to what I do with my hands. Another little tip I can give you when you're pointing is I think this will help you in regards to releasing the amount of weight you have. When you comb the hair up, okay, if you just bend your fingers like that, the hair fans itself out, and then you can be really selective on your pointing. Now, if you ever look at my work or look at any of the stuff that we do with Alilon, a lot of the things I personally tend to do tend to be a little bit, let me think of the right word, can be quite graphic. I do like to make statements when I'm working on certain shapes, but tonight I really wanted to show you something which hopefully you think is really beautiful and really simple and not too scary. Hopefully you'll be able to maybe go in tomorrow to your shops and have a little go and try and see if we can share this shape with customers or with clients and guests. I'm almost finished. I'm going to be introducing a technique called weave cutting in a minute. I don't know if anyone's heard of weave cutting, but basically it's evolved from the way technicians weave through hair when they're highlighting. And what I'll do is if I show you now, it'll be a good little tip for you. Okay, so the biggest mistake people make when they do this technique is they either do it too far up the head or they don't consider the length that they're choosing. So for example, this is how you weave cut. What you do is you take a panel of hair, okay, don't make it too thick. Now let's say you had someone with very, very, very dense hair, okay? But she didn't want to have layering because the texture isn't very good when it's layered. It makes it harder for them to manage. What you do is you take a thin section of hair, like this, okay? Make sure it's clean, bottom and top. Okay? And then what you do is you comb the hair out like this. And then with your blades, you don't go like this angle, yeah? What you must do is you must change the angle so it's like that. And what you do is you basically go into the hair like this, and you move across like this. And what it does is it basically gives you like a thinning technique, which basically allows you to loosen the shape up and lighten the hair through. Now, if you do this from the underneath, what happens is the shorter hair sits underneath and the longer hair sits on top. If you do it from the top, the shorter hair is on top and the longer hair is underneath, so you get a lot more visible types of movements. Now, if you do this in the mid-lengths, what you're going to do is reduce the weight towards the mid-lengths to the ends. The closer you go to the root, the more you reduce the weight throughout. So it depends what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to soften the outline, let's say you've got a lady with quite dense hair and it's all sitting on the same point. Rather than layering the whole thing through, you could use this weaving technique and you can go whatever length you want to start to weave cut it and just reduce the weight from that area. And then what it does, it just takes away the feeling of it being triangular. One of the things that I'd like to talk to you about is this principle of our culture of how we've trained our customers or our clients. Often, clients come in and they go, I just want a one length. So what I'd like to do with you is discuss the principles of one length with you. When I was training, a one length basically would be like a one length bob, for example. Okay? Now, the more and more I've personally grown and our team have grown and the industry has progressed, the more and more I realise that certain things that we've inherited, once you actually investigate and go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, you realise there's a lot more to it than just the plain simplicity of it. So for example, when we talk about a one length shape, a one length shape technically would be a round layer. And the idea behind that is the fact that all the hair on the head is one length. So when we talk about a one length bob, technically a one length bob is not a one length, because the idea is that in theory, the practicality of it is it's graduation. And the reason why it's graduation is because the length of the nape is shorter than the length of the top. And graduation is a build-up of weight working from shorter externally to longer internally. So technically what you're doing is you're taking the angle of graduation and just dropping it down. So the external length is shorter than the internal length. So a line, or a bob, what was known as a one-length bob, technically is pure graduation, hence why you've always got graduation when you're trying to check the line. If you really think about it, when you start to dissect it, a one-length haircut will technically be a round layer. But in its purest form, a one-length haircut actually wouldn't be round. Let's digest that a little bit. Imagine a skinhead. Okay, so imagine my head, or Randy's head, or Ped's head. No, actually, both Ped's head. It's much prettier.
Imagine me.
So if you imagine a skinhead that basically just grows out, that could be so many different beautiful, round, soft shapes. But the reality is it wouldn't be round. And the reason why it wouldn't be round is because your head's not round. So technically, if you shave the head and just let it grow into a layered shape, the actual shape when you pull it out would mirror what the head shape looks like. So technically, it's not a round layer. It's, in its purest form, it's the same shape as the head, which is obviously very hard to do. So let's think about that externally. So my question to you guys, which would be good for maybe a little bit of a discussion, if I shaved my model's head, don't worry, I'm not going to do that, but if I did shave her head, and let's just say it grew out to this length, what would the external shape look like? That's my question to you guys, hopefully to create some kind of dialogue or interaction. So my question is, what would the external shape look like if I shaved the head and it grew out to about this kind of length, for example, everywhere? Maybe by the time we finish, we can have a little bit of a discussion about it, because I think it's quite a funny discussion.
We've got a few questions about scissors, Johnny.
Okay.
What are you using?
Good question. Okay, so we're very, very lucky. We're fortunate enough to be in a position now where we've started to create our own tools. These are the Allelon scissors. And what we've done, there's two versions. There's this one.
That's good right there.
And there's this one. Let me show you this one, which is our classic. And the idea behind the Allelon scissors is it comes with, obviously, the pair of scissors, an oil pen, a black Allelon chamois, and also a card which allows you to talk about the maintenance and what to do with the scissors, how to clean them. And there are two different types of scissors. One is slightly more ergonomic than the other. So both of them are very, very thin on the tips. I don't know if you can see that. The tips are really, really fine. If I put them on a white background, you'll be able to see it a bit better. So the idea is with them, obviously the way we tend to work is with a lot of detail. So the points, it's taken me about 2.5 years to get to this stage with these scissors, back and forward from Japan. And what we need is a blade which is long enough to be able to sit in the palm of your finger here, but not long enough to the point where you're constantly catching yourself. And it needs to be something which has got a nice point to the edge, so that way when you're doing your detail work and you're refining, you're really kind of working on the detail, really pointing it. And it's very light. I don't want to feel like I'm selling the scissors, to be honest, but they're, for us, they're what we use and we love them. And if you want to buy them, then all you have to do is, again, email info@Alon Education or tools@Alon Education, and we can send them out to you.
So a lot of people are asking about the technique. The questions are, is it around layout? Obviously, they've
I
just
think
joined.
they're guessing what
Yeah,
it would
they've just
be
joined.
if,
You know, so.
yes, what it would grow out to. if
Okay,
we shave
so-
it.
Yes.
So this is the question. The question is, if we shaved somebody's head, and we let it grow out, what would the external shape look like?
Tonic hairstyle, I've got the answer.
They're not allowed to answer because we told them the answer. Hello, boys. Okay, I'm going to use a technique called slicing. And what I'm doing is I'm using the tip of the blade here, this corner bit here, and I'm basically going to gently run the hair, the blade through. And don't open and close it. I just run.
And Teresa said it would probably look horrible when it grows out.
It will look horrible. I agree. Well, depends actually. It depends on what length we're talking about.
Yeah.
It can look very horrible. That's true. But my question is, what does the external shape? So, what does the external shape look like?
They can all see Tonic's response now, Johnny.
Oh, is he already answered?
Yes.
Who is it? Andrea or Manos?
I'm not too sure, but it's one of them. But they said the shape of the hairline.
Bravo. Well done. Well done. So technically, what would happen is, if you shave the head and let it grow out, even if it was this long, in the exterior shape would basically look whatever the hairline would be. So the length would basically drop like that. It would go up and then come back down. And these are the things that we like to discuss. We like to take things a little bit deeper than what we naturally would do. We like to kind of tear things apart and reinvigorate and find out some more. When we think we've got the answers, we start again. So
It was Manos.
was Manos. Well done, Manomo. Well done. Okay. That's interesting. Can you see what just happened, actually? Let me show you. That's a good learning curve for you guys. Can you see what I've just done with the blade? Because I've dragged it, I didn't open and close the blade, I dragged it. Can you see what it's done to the hair, the cuticle? It's basically made it all very coarse. So when you're doing that technique, obviously concentrate, not like me, talking away. But can you see it there? Yeah. So when you're doing that technique, gently open and close your scissors. Don't drag it through, otherwise that's what happens to the hair. Okay, so I'm coming up to the finishing touches of my haircut. I'm going to go through all my haircut horizontally, and I'm going to gently slice through all the hair just to get a nice, loose, soft feeling. If I come around this way, you'll be able to see my shape a lot better. I'm opening and closing my scissors gently. I've got another question for you guys, which I think is quite a fun one. Scissor over comb. Is it a technique? That's my question. Is scissor over comb a technique? Let's see what the responses are with that one. Okay, so I'm going to comb the hair through quite evenly. And again, depending on where I do this will determine how wide or how flat the profile will be of the hair. And I'm doing this if you look carefully, about every inch. Yeah, so. And what this is going to do is just going to create a much looser feeling to the haircut. Perfect. Now, be careful how high you go with this technique, and the same with weave cutting, because sometimes what tends to happen is, and this is a lesson that some of our team have experienced in the past, which has been quite funny, the higher you go, obviously the shorter the hair can react and respond. So if you're chipping or weave cutting or slicing through this area, just be careful how high, obviously, how low you go, because you can really create a haircut which has little sticky outy bits, which isn't very sexy.
Got a lot of responses, a lot of yeses, and then somebody,
So this is overcome.
Neil said it's a thumb exercise, scissor over comb, and then Jeff O'Neill says it's a method.
Cool. I love that. Jeff said that.
Jeff,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, Jeff, let's discuss that, because I love the fact that you've just said that. Okay, so if we have a very quick brainstorm about primary shape. So we talk about the fact that obviously we talk like everybody else about what graduation is and what layering is and what line is. So that's something which is very common that everyone talks about. So let's really think about scissor over comb. So if graduation, as the team have said, is a build-up of length working from shorter externally to longer internally, then layering, let me ask, Woody, what's layering?
It's the removal of weight.
Good. So layering is a removal of weight, which is the parallel opposite to graduation. So if you think about scissor over comb, actually, let's talk about layering. Let's say with this particular haircut, the method in which I cut the layering was I took a vertical section, I combed the hair out, and I cut a triangular cutting line. That was the method in which I created my layered shape. Well, scissor over comb, the method, is to run your scissors against the grain, to work in unison with your scissors, to weave the scissors twice as fast as the comb, to work in columns, blah, blah, blah. There's a method in which it's achieved. But technically, when you really think about it, scissor over comb is actually, it's not a technique, and I'll explain to you why. Because scissor over comb is either layering or graduation, depending on whether you're going to build a corner or not. So if you're going to build a corner, it falls under the family of graduation. If you're going to follow the contour of the head, then it falls under the family of layering. So technically, scissor over comb is a method in which you create either layering or graduation. Which, when you think about it, is really fascinating because it's taking it to, it's thinking slightly differently. Yeah? If you're building a corner within the shape, then obviously what you'll tend to be doing is graduating hair. One more question for you guys before I finish up my haircut. How many sections should you have in your hands whenever you're cutting hair? That's my question. I think it's an interesting question because hopefully it will make you guys... what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to challenge the way you're thinking about hair.
Okay, so until we get some responses, John, talk to us about our latest collection.
Okay, perfect. Our latest collection, Randy, if you want to zoom into the photos over there on the wall, is called Change.
You'll have to come with me or they won't hear you.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Am I talking loud enough, by the way? The police,
Yeah,
the police are coming for me. Okay, so this is one of our images from our latest collection. This is called the Change collection. This haircut was cut by Pedro, this was cut by myself, this was cut by Kate. And if we go over there to the backwash area, we go right this way. This haircut was cut by Jonathan, this haircut was cut by myself, and this haircut was cut by myself. The Change collection is quite an interesting collection. It's based on an photographer called JR. JR is from Paris, and he does really amazing photography, like really cool photography. And if I tell you a bit more about the actual collection itself, I'm lucky enough to have two really beautiful boys. And one of the jobs of a father, and a mother of course, is to try and shield our children from negative influences. And one of the things that I'm really frustrated about is every time I go online, every time you go on Facebook or anything, any newspaper, any news feed, it's always negativity and it's always destructive and it's always about focusing on the things that divide us rather than the things that unite us. And that for me is a big problem because we're being poisoned to think a certain way constantly. So the Change collection is about changing the way we think about things. When you really think about it, when you really pare it back, it doesn't matter what creed you are, it doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what sexual orientation you are. In the end, we're all exactly the same. We're all part of humanity. And the Change Collection is a way of us as a company expressing and celebrating the things that unite us rather than the things that divide us. It's about changing the way we think. It's about changing the perception that we're constantly fed. And JR was the source of inspiration for this particular collection, because one of the things that he was asked is, can art change the world? And what he realised was that, or what he vocalised was, he didn't feel that art could change the world because there's too many moving factors to that, politics, money, and so forth. But what art could do is change the perception in which the world is seen. And that for us was a massive, massive influence. There's a couple of his projects specifically which we found quite inspirational. One of them was called Face to Face, which basically what he did is he went to Israel and Palestine, and he basically put an Israeli face on a Palestinian wall and a Palestinian face on an Israeli wall next to each other like this. And what he did is he took a picture of a doctor from Israel and a doctor from Palestine, a teacher from Palestine and a teacher from Israel, and he put them next to each other. And when he was in, I can't remember which country he was in, people were like, what are you doing putting
Gaza Strip.
on the Gaza Strip?
Yeah.
He's like, what are you doing putting a face of, you know, this person on my wall, on our wall? And he said, okay, fair enough, I can understand how you can get upset, but do me a favour, just tell me which one's the Palestinian and which one's the Israeli. And that, for me, is a really potent message, because it's, in the end, they're exactly the same. They just have different, whatever, political views or whatever, you know. It's just really, really about celebrating the things that unite us rather than the things that divide us.
Do you remember the question that you asked?
The question that I asked was...
How many sections have you got in your hand at once?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, your guideline and your new section. 1, but you should have some of the previous section with it. 2, 2, 1, 4. Alex said 4.
Okay, so I love that. First of all, thank you for the dialogue. I appreciate it. Let me try and get you to think of it slightly differently. In a round shape or in a square shape, you tend to have two sections in your hand. The guide and the hair that you're introducing to the guide, or the hair that the guide is moving to. But when you're working a triangular shape, you have multiple sections. You could have up to 10 sections or more in your hand, because section 1 will be your guide, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it all comes back to 1. So that, in that scenario where you're going very triangular, you could have multiple sections in your hand. So when you're working on a round shape, you tend to have 2, your guide and the hair that you're introducing to the cutting line. In a square shape, there can be a situation where you can have just 2, and there can be a situation where you could have 2 or 3 in your hand at the same time. But in a triangular shape, you tend to have you have multiple sections in your hand, because obviously you have your guide and all the hair that's travelling to your guide. I hope that makes sense, guys.
They're worried about our eyes, or somebody.
She ain't got any. It's all right, don't worry. Okay. So, I'm going to call it a day. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a bit of product to style the hair, okay? I'm going to use various products. I want to use this. This is a product by Davines, but it's also a product by a really, really, really good friend of mine, a guy called Angelo Seminaro, and he's created a range of products, which for me, it's called My Hair Assistant, and I personally love them. This is really, really cool. It's basically like a powder, and think of it a bit like a dust. And what it does, basically, if you, I'll show you. As you work it, what it starts to do is it starts to basically release dust into the hair. And what it can do is it can give a little bit of volume at the roots. And it makes the hair feel a little bit dirty. And what's cool about it as well is that a lot of our clients who buy it, They tend to use this, when it runs out of the powder, they tend to use it as a makeup brush, which is quite cool. And then what I'm also going to use is a little bit of the hairspray.
Can you tell them that they're not on their cell phones, they're watching the live feed?
None of these guys care about what I'm doing. They're all basically just watching, they're texting each other and talking to their boyfriends. No, basically what they're doing is they're watching what you're watching, which I think is very sweet. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to use a hair assistant hairspray. This one personally, I like it because it feels a little bit like, and you know, everyone knows Elnet, don't they? And Elnet's a really, really common product that people use when styling and doing session work. In my opinion, this is just as good. And basically what it does, it just gives me a very, very... I can do it so it doesn't move, or I can spray it so that way I can still, the hair's still pliable. And what I'm doing is I'm just spraying the roots. I'm not trying to spray the ends. And then after, when I brush the hair through, it will feel a little bit dirty. So I'm done. Thank you very much. Enjoy your haircut. It's been a pleasure doing your hair. And then all you do now, sorry Randy, get your paddle brush, your Alilon paddle brush. And then just brush the hair through a little bit and just get rid of the intensity of the product. And what will happen is the hair will start to feel a little bit dirty. So when the hair moves, it will have a little bit of substance to it, because when the hair's too clean, it tends to feel very, very soft and very flat and doesn't have a lot of life to it. I hope you like what I've been doing for you guys. I'm sure this won't be the last video I do with Randy and the team. And next time what I'll do is I'll do something a lot more graphic and shorter and more kind of ergonomic and geometric and something a bit more what Johnny normally does. But tonight I really wanted to show you something a bit loose and a bit softer. And what I like about this shape is that when you... Sorry, Randy.
So good.
If you just loosely through the hairdryer, the shape will move nicely.
Even though you've got those 6 zones in there, you know, they're kind of merging together, aren't they?
Yeah. And if you, after you put your hairspray in, if you just get the heat in there, it just activates the hair, activates the product a bit more.
Lots of thank yous coming in, guys.
Thank you guys for taking your time out of your life to be with me. It's like, it's very humbling, because you could be doing so many other things right now, spending the time with your loved ones, and you're here with us having some fun with hair. So I'm really grateful for your time, and I'm grateful for your interaction as well. Okay. So this, if I go back through my haircut one more time with you, exactly how I cut it and what I did, and we will be getting back to you in regards to the colour, the formula. In fact, Ped, do me a favour, would you WhatsApp, or can someone WhatsApp Evie and get the colour formulation for me?
Well, we have it.
Oh, we have it?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
They're at the head of the game.
Serena, do me a favour, would you be able to tell them the formula? Is that okay? Or yeah, not my name. Any of the guys do colour, not me, do colour. I'm not that gifted.
You'll have to come up though, Serena.
And then also post it in the comments.
Yeah.
It would be great.
So what kind of colours have you done?
Is 70 gram on 9O plus 10 grams of 422 and 5 grams of 221 with 5 volt, and the mix ratio is 1:2.
And that's Davines colour. Yeah, we in NSL we're Davines exclusive, so we only use Davines styling products and Davines colour, which well, the reality is we don't need to use anything else. They're good enough to be able to be using them. So with this particular haircut, just so you know, actually styling wise, before I blow dried it, I used because I started my haircut dry, I used the DD Mist and a little bit of the Momo, the Love Smooth, sorry, to get it nice and smooth. So my haircut, how did I cut it? I basically worked multiple zones, 6 zones in total. The first one was from the crown to the nape, and then my section went around like this. I worked, my first shape was a triangular cutting line, working from shorter externally to longer internally. This was a triangular layer. And I worked on the base, so my horizontal shape was round, my vertical shape was triangular, and I worked to the top of the ear. Then I took my zone from the top to the front temple area, the recession area, and I worked on this zone, which was zone 2, on a triangular cutting line again, but a different length. And I worked everything back to number 1, so that way I keep an extra bit of length around the front of the face. Then I moved on to my 3rd zone, which was basically here, this zone here. And again, I worked on the base, but I worked all the way around, so just behind the ear on this side. Which brings me on to my 4th zone, which was basically on the underneath on this side, which was this zone here. And what I did is I worked pivoting sections with a triangular cutting line, so I've got a lot more movement, but then I keep a lot of length and weight on the external shape. Then I worked through the top zone. Basically, in effect, we had like quite a large rectangle. And what I did is I split it into 2 zones. The first zone was here, so 2 triangles. The first one I started on the inside with a triangular cutting line, and I pivoted from this point here, working again shortest longer. And then this front zone, let me remember what I did is who can remind me because I've forgotten what I did with that zone. From this side. I started this side, that was it, well done. I started on this side with a round cutting line, and I directed everything over here. So again, that was one of the zones where I used multiple sections in my hand. Then I worked freehand techniques, i.e. pointing, slicing, weave cutting, and the end result is just a really beautiful commercial, sexy, soft shape. And even though I've got multiple zones in there, it looks like one haircut, and hopefully she'll be able to really enjoy the shape. And it helps when you've got a really beautiful girl sitting there as well. If you did this on me, trust me, it wouldn't look this good. So do you have any questions before I say bye to you all?
No, but I did want to just mention again that there's a lot of people saying they wish they could take courses with you, and I think that you should explain that there's a lot of really passionate people in the room, and they're going to be here for how long?
Another week and a half, these guys, and then they go back to Taiwan. And then we've got another group from Italy the week after that. And then we've got another group from...
So you can come to London.
Yeah, you can. So basically, this is the call to action. If you really want to start, if you're really serious about education, and you don't mind being challenged, and you're happy to be pushed. If you want to come here and we'll tell you how great you are and this is fantastic and well done, handshake, enjoy the diploma, see you later. That is not what Al-Anon is about. Al-Anon is a journey, and what we will do is we will work with you, we will push you, we will ask you questions, we'll make you think, and we'll have some fun. In the end, it's about fun, isn't it? But it's also about that growth, and sometimes it is hard trying to learn bad habits and drop bad habits and almost start again and look at things slightly differently. If you are interested in joining Al-Anon on a journey, on the Al-Anon journey, email us at info@alanoneducation.com. We will then have a correspondence with you and give you options. We could come to you, to your salons, and train your staff and teach you how to train your staff to try and standardise your brand. We could work with your educators to train your educators to use the Al-Anon language to share what it is that we love about hair. You could come to London, into our academy, into this space, and we could work with you on a primary shapes course and start your Al-Anon journey together. One of the things that we're really passionate about is when we go around and do seminars and shows and things like that, we're very lucky. We're very, very lucky. We get to go everywhere. And if you look at, for example, our Facebook page, so if you go onto Facebook and like our page, Al-Anon Education, you'll see all the things we're doing. We're constantly telling people what we're up to, where we're going, the latest show we've been on, little tips in regards to our journey. If you want us to come to you, we can do that. If you want to come to us, we can do that. If you want tools, we can do that. Just think of us as your partner rather than another company that's just trying to sell you stuff, because that's not what we're trying to do. We want you to come on our journey with us. We want you to share this with us. We're going to keep ripping ourselves to shreds and starting again, trying to really purify what we're doing. And we would love for you to be part of that journey.
Bring us home, Ted.
Ta-da! He's a pretty one.
My business partner, best friend. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks
Thank
for
you
joining
very
in.
much.
And speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.